All right, welcome to part two, where we're going to compare the three rifles and the factors I feel are the most important: accuracy and precision. Ergonomics. Ergonomics is basically how does the gun feel and shoot in all situations? How is it like to carry? Is it easy to point? Getting the sight picture, is it a comfortable butt pad in your shoulder? Do you get a nice cheek weld on the comb? All these factors are kind of included. Starting with the air arms, it has very nice ergonomics. Okay, it's got this traditional rifle styling. It shoulders perfectly. It's got a great cheek comb here for your cheek to get a nice weld, as long as your scope rings are appropriate height. It packs well. I've got slings that aren't on it right now. They're kind of a pain when I'm shooting bench, so I don't have them on there at the moment. But packing it with a shoulder sling is really, really easy. It's really a great gun. And it's not very adjustable is really the only knock on it. So if you wanted to adjust the butt pad, you can't do it. Your comb height, if you had higher rings than this, you're kind of stuck. Also, I've noticed when shooting offhand, which I've done quite a bit recently with this gun when getting the accuracy tests done, maybe it's because of the moderator I've got on the end, but it's just slightly heavy in the front. And at least when I'm shooting offhand for long periods of time, that is something that has caused me fatigue. But for the most part, just really, you could almost not ask for a more comfortable, grippy, easy to pack around gun. Actually, did I just say you couldn't ask for a more ergonomic, grippy, easy to pack around gun? Yes, you can, and that would be the Steyr. The Steyr is like perfectly balanced. It's a little bit shorter than the air arms. The grip, a little bit more of a pistol grip feel to it, but it's got really nice, I don't even know what you call this. It's not checkering, but it's rough. Fits in the hand just perfectly. This gun shoulders just like a dream. I have never ever not had my eye go immediately to a perfect sight picture by pulling this up to the shoulder. It feels lighter than the air arms, even though I think it might be a little bit heavier. Shooting from the bench, there's absolutely no issues. I did add a Gotta Grip little heightener on the comb here. I just haven't gotten around to taking this off. I don't need it anymore. I just put this on there. I was shooting a lot of 200-yard targets, and I needed adjustable rings to do that, which did throw the line of sight off a little bit. I need my comb raised a little bit. Obviously, this doesn't have an adjustable comb, so that I could adjust that and then lower it back down. I had to add this on there, which takes away a little bit from the ergonomics. But just the balance is absolutely perfect. I was really surprised when shooting this offhand how easy and comfortable it really was. Alright, so I took the bipod and the moderator off this when I was kind of judging this one on ergonomics. And even without that, this gun is heavy starting off with. I mean, just feeling it, packing it around, it feels like it's about 5 pounds heavier than the other two guns. I think it's marginally more heavy, but it feels significantly more heavy than those other two rifles. It's nice and short, compact. It shoulders okay. Probably because it's the Bullpup. It's a Bullpup, and I'm not really familiar with Bullpups. I don't get a sight picture quite as rapidly. As soon as I pull this up to my eye, I almost always have to adjust a little bit. It's really hard to find a good rest right here on this part of the rifle, no matter what I've done to put on there. I've tried a couple of different things. It's just not an ideal situation. The square fore end, okay, fine for if I'm shooting offhand, but it feels front heavy to me a bit. Okay, it just a bit. It's a heavy rifle. So I've noticed that if I shoot offhand for any lengths of period of time, like I did when I was doing accuracy testing, that I get fatigued with this gun more than the other guns. The last thing I want to point out on the veteran's ergonomics is shooting from a bench. I have found it not nearly as comfortable as the other guns when I'm shooting from the bench, and it comes from, I think, the shape of the stock right here. So if I need to raise the back of the gun up and pinch the bag to keep the gun elevated, I can do that. However, if I lower it a little bit, the gun, it just sits right across the nerve in my hand that over time becomes extremely painful. I'm probably the only person in the world that this happens to, but I just thought I'd share my experience. Shooting this gun from a bench isn't nearly as comfortable as those other two rifles. Alright, I'm just going to come right out and say it. I am a trigger snob, and it's all air rifles' fault. Before I owned air rifles, I was not a trigger snob at all. As long as you pulled the trigger and it shot, I was happy. Air rifles have completely changed my opinion on triggers. And now I'm to the point where I know exactly what kind of trigger I like. I like a 6-ounce second stage pull with a really short uptake on the light first stage. It's, everybody likes a clean braking trigger and no sponginess and all that. So it's to the point where if a gun doesn't have a good trigger, then I don't like the gun. I recently took a 10-22 out to the range because I hadn't fired it for years, and I literally thought the gun was broken. I hadn't shot it in so long. It's got a 5-pound trigger pull. And I thought the gun was broken. Is the safety on? No. Do I have one in the chamber? Yep. Jacked out the shell. Finally figured I just wasn't squeezing the trigger hard enough. How embarrassing is that? Okay, fortunately there was no one else around. But it was like an eye-opening experience to me how used to a good trigger I have gotten. And so if the gun is adjustable, has an adjustable trigger, that goes a long ways. But just because it has an adjustable trigger doesn't mean it can be adjusted to the way I like it. And so a safe 6-ounce trigger is what I'm looking for. .7, 9.5, 11.6. I didn't really feel very comfortable on that one. 11.2, 10.4, 11.0, 10.9, 8.9, 8.5, I think this is the 10th one, 10.9 for an average of 10.3. Full disclosure, before I test the trigger pull on the Steyr, this is not the factory trigger as it came to me from Steyr. I've made two changes. The first is I changed the trigger shoe. The stock trigger was a little bit too far back for my comfort. I like to shoot using the first pad of my finger on the trigger, and even pushing the old trigger as far forward as it could, it was most comfortable shooting a second pad, and I didn't like that. So I changed it. The more significant change was as I changed a spring to a lighter spring in the actual trigger mechanism, which lightened it significantly and made it just about perfect for me. But the stock spring, I couldn't adjust the trigger pull to less than a pound. It was a little over the pound. I can't remember what the exact number was. So I'm going to score this a 5 for this trigger because when it came from the factory, it was not as good as we're about to test. 4.6, 4.3, 4.3, 3.8, 2.4, 5.5, 5.0, 3.7, 3.3, 4.0, I don't know, maybe this is 10, I lost count, 4.0. So for an average, 4.1. Taipan Veteran, shot 1, 4.2. $4.7, 4.3, 5.6, 4.6, shot 6, 3.7, shot 7, 5.0, shot 8, 4.4, shot 9, 4.1, shot 10, 3.9 for an average of 4.4. Next, we'll compare how well the regulator in each rifle maintains shot-to-shot consistency. This is important because at long ranges, a big spread in muzzle velocity will cause a big spread in group sizes. Each gun was filled to 200 bar and fired down until it went off the regulated pressure for a total of 10 shot strings. I apologize for losing 8 of the shot strings I collected for the veteran, but the results were similar to the 2 that I did manage to save and include in the data table. The air arms had the lowest spread and the lowest standard deviation of a little under 4. The veteran also did very well with a reasonable spread and a standard deviation of just over 4. The Steyr, on the other hand, did struggle a little bit. Its shot string would occasionally have spikes or dips that would mess the standard deviation up significantly. To determine 10-meter accuracy, I shot 5 of these scorecards with each rifle. Each scorecard was scored using a 22 caliber scoring plug. I was a little surprised that the Steyr dominated as much as it did. It was clearly the most stable to hold offhand, and the semi-auto action allowed me to get 5 shots off without lowering the gun between shots. I was able to get into a nice groove with the Steyr. I struggled to keep the crosshairs on target a bit more with the veteran and the air arms, and I felt noticeable fatigue after shooting the veteran. For 25-meter accuracy, I used the official scorecard shown. Each rifle shot 10 scorecards in the same conditions and were scored using a 22 caliber scoring plug. I really enjoyed this testing and took lots of data. I even compared the Steyr's preferred air arms pellet with its performance with the 25.43 Monster redesign pellets. I've always been really impressed with the Steyr's accuracy with that heavier pellet at short distances. The results after shooting 250 shots with each gun was a statistical tie. Ties aren't allowed, so it turns out that just by a hair the Steyr's score was a bit higher, but I would feel comfortable shooting any of these 3 rifles in a 25-meter competition. I'm going to combine the 50-yard and 100-yard precision sections together here. The reason is that I collected both sets of data simultaneously. I'd shoot five-shot groups with each gun at the 50-yard range and then move to the 100-yard range and repeat using the bigger targets. I did this over 5 days, so there was a variety of weather conditions over the 250 shots I fired with each gun. Most importantly, the results at 50 and 100 yards tell the exact same story. I could tell right away that there was something wrong with the Steyr. It was not shooting with near the precision that it normally does. I dutifully kept taking it to the range and shooting it to collect the data because I wanted the data to be consistent. But all the while, there was a nagging feeling in my brain that there was something wrong. And then it finally occurred to me, when was the last time I'd cleaned the barrel? I thought back, and it turns out that it was probably around 15,000 shots ago, 9 months since I'd cleaned it when I'd had the barrel threaded. And so I decided right then and there that I'd finish collecting the data, I would compare the precision, make it a fair test, but before collecting accuracy data at 50 and 100 yards, that I would clean all 3 barrels, and as a side benefit, I'd be able to compare how cleaning your barrel affects accuracy versus dirty barrels. But first, let's summarize the results of the precision testing by looking at the median target for each gun. Keep in mind that each one of these targets is from 100 yards. There were 12 that were better than this target, and there were 12 that were worse. So you're looking at the Air Arms target right now. I was pretty pleased with the Air Arms' precision out to 100 yards. I was getting, average of less than 2 inches spread from the gun, which was frankly better than I expected. Some of the conditions were breezier than I would have liked. There were some calm days, but you compare that with the Steyr, and the Air Arms won hands down. The Steyr grouped an average of about 2.5 inches. Again, half of them were better and half of them were worse, but it was not characteristic of this gun. The gun that was by far the most impressive was the Taipan Veteran. It shot several sub-MOA groups with an average of about 1.25 inches. So, half of the targets were under 1.25 inches and half of them were over it. It was an extremely impressive performance, and Taipan came out the clear winner. Remember, before testing accuracy, all 3 guns had their barrels thoroughly cleaned. I used the same targets that I used during the 25-meter accuracy testing, and the results came out much more favorably for the Steyr. The Taipan Veteran still won the 50-meter accuracy results test, but the Steyr dominated the Air Arms like I expected it would, and it gave the Taipan a run for its money. In fact, while collecting the data, I wasn't sure if the Steyr or the Taipan was shooting more accurately. I had to wait until I got home and used the 22 scoring plug to find out that the Taipan did indeed edge out the Steyr. These are the results I basically expected. The Taipan's shooting at a higher velocity with a heavier pellet that's less affected by the wind, and so it was more forgiving. When a big breeze would come up, it didn't push the pellet as far out as it would with the lighter, slower moving pellets from the Air Arms and the Steyr. So at this point, it was pretty clear that the Taipan Veteran was the most accurate at distance. I was just curious to see if the barrel cleaning had any effect on the Steyr at shooting at 100 yards. You'll remember that at 100-yard precision, the Steyr badly trailed the Air Arms, and I really wanted to know how the precision as well as the accuracy of the Steyr changed with the barrel cleaning. As you can see in the pictures, I chose a different target for accuracy testing. I chose 100-yard bench rest targets that had more rings so that I could get more detailed accuracy here. Both guns shot amazingly well out to 100 yards. The Steyr with a clean barrel shot the way I expected it to, the way I was used to it shooting, and both guns were shooting so well that I couldn't tell at the range which gun was actually winning. It wasn't until I got home that I saw that the Taipan veteran edged out the Steyr. Over 166 shots, the Taipan veteran had an average score of about 8.8, while the Steyr managed an average score of about 7.8 per shot. You'll notice in this section that I don't have any data for the air arms. That's because I noticed that the regulator in the gun wasn't working. It just was such a beautiful day with such a light breeze that I wanted to collect all the data I could, and so I finished all the data for both the Steyr and the Taipan in one day. I also used the targets that I didn't shoot up with the air arms to collect more precision data for the Steyr. I wanted to compare the dirty barrel versus the clean barrel precision at 100 yards. It's not a perfect comparison by any means because the weather conditions were different, but as you can see by the two targets, the precision after the barrel was cleaned was good enough that I could actually shoot for accuracy. Before, the shots were so scattered I couldn't tell if it shot high and right because the wind blew it or because just the gun was just randomly scattering the pellets. So now all I need to do is figure out what a good cleaning regimen is for the Steyr. All I know for sure right now is that it's more often than every 15 to 20,000 shots. So as we look at our final results, what jumps out is that the Taipan veteran was clearly the best long-range gun. It was the most accurate and precise due to the heavier pellets and the higher power. The Steyr would be the best hunting rifle. Its ergonomics, lightweight, easy to shoot, offhand, semi-automatic action would make it the most ideal gun to carry out in the field. And the air arms, it was just a solid jack-of-all-trades type of rifle. Thank you for hanging with me all the way through to the end of these two long videos. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching.